With the leaks of the Rise of Skywalker novelization recently making the rounds online, we've now been given absolute confirmation behind one of the most controversial parts of the movie, which is how the heck Palpatine came back from the dead. Previously, it was largely assumed that Palpatine had returned due to dark Sith magic, but he was still in his original body, especially given the gross rotting state it was in. However, as it turns out, this wasn't the case, as in actuality, the Palpatine we see in the Rise of Skywalker is not in his original body, but really nothing more than a clone. Now, that's not to say this still isn't the Palpatine we all know, because it totally is, just in a clone body. As the novelization explains, Palpatine's spirit is sheltered in this clone vessel, and the reason the body is rotting is because it can't contain his immense power. This was also further elaborated in the Cinefex magazine, which states the following. JJ wanted to bring him back to reveal that Palpatine wasn't completely destroyed in Episode 6. He created a clone of himself and with the help of Sith loyalists, rebuilt himself to a fragmented and unstable state. When Kylo meets him, Palpatine is not fully formed, and he relies on tubes and mechanics moving around his Sith laboratory on a mechanism that Kevin Jenkins designed. He has the spirit of the Sith, but he's trapped inside a body that's incomplete. With that all said, this canon answer has seemingly caused a lot of anger and vitriol in the Star Wars community, with a lot of fans not happy with the explanation in the slightest. And honestly, I don't get it. The previous assumed explanation that Palpatine had somehow kept his original body never quite sat right with me, as there's no way he was able to survive that fall and Return of the Jedi, and in addition to that, still remain alive 30 years after with a mangled body. Yet this canon explanation of his spirit being trapped in a clone body makes sense and overcomes those plot holes completely. Now, is it a perfect explanation? No, and I never did like the story of Palpatine cloning himself back in Legends, or even the idea of bringing him back for Rise of Skywalker in general. But if they really had to have him in the movie, then sure, cloning is the most simple and cleanest explanation to have. And honestly, I already kinda figured this was the case anyway. Because in the Rise of Skywalker, Palpatine admits in spoken dialogue that he had already died before. Not to mention his clone body also lacked the deformations that were given to him by Mace Windu, which he then only regained once he absorbed the power of the dyad from Ben and Rey, allowing his spirit to fully transform and shape his clone body to his natural state. And then there's of course Dominic Monaghan's character Beaumont, who also theorizes how Palpatine's return is even possible, citing two options, dark science and cloning. And then when the novelization confirms it was done through both of these, yet somehow people are afterwards shocked of this information. I just don't really understand why. Now granted, it's not entirely in your face, but the clues are definitely there. Along with that, in an Awards Daily interview with Chris Terrio on December 30th, he basically admitted to Palpatine being a clone when he said, "The entity known as Palpatine in this version, his body died in Return of the Jedi, is patient and has been waiting. He dug his foxhole and has been waiting for his chance to re-establish his total domination." Now, I'll admit, I wanted to make a video on Palpatine being a clone since this article first came out, but didn't go through with it as there was still some wiggle room for interpretation in his words. And just figured, meh, I'll rather wait a few months for the novel to confirm this 100% before making a video on the subject. And yeah, I'm glad I did, because now I can work with the canon facts rather than just mostly speculation. Oh yeah, and for those folks who still believe this is a retcon and will try to tell you otherwise, yeah, don't believe those lies. As Ian McDiarmid himself even recently admitted that a deleted scene in the movie, Palpatine pretty much reveals he's a clone to Kylo.
Yes, well of course there were all sorts of explanations for why I might return, but it's interesting, there was, I think I can reveal something. At one point, the script had the line in that first scene with Adam, when he says, "You're a clone." And I said in that original script, which is no longer with us, more than a clone, less than a man. Which seemed to me to sum him up, really, because we knew that, well, the camera has already snaked past the clone tank, in which there are various versions of Snoke that you probably noticed. Spin it back and have a look. Well, you can't yet, can you? But you'll be able to once it's on Disney Plus, I think, not too far distant future. Yeah, so Snoke was a clone. He did. Palpatine was responsible for everything. He made everything in one way or another. And that's, talk about power early on. If you think back from, well, I'm sure you will, go back to watch them in the correct sequence, that's threaded throughout all of the movies, is this sense of evil. And in a sense, when everyone commits a bad act, it's because of this character's influence, either in public or pervasively in private or apparent.
Now, as for how Palpatine managed to send his spirit to his cloned body before dying, this is where I can speculate a little. And it's my belief that the blue fire explosion that occurred when he fell down the Death Star is the answer behind this, as it's the same blue-like fire as seen and used by Palpatine many times during Sith rituals in both the Clone Wars and Rebels. So knowing the end has come for him, he quickly performed a Sith ritual in his last moments that transferred his spirit to Exegol. And knowing how Palpatine basically had a contingency plan for almost everything, I can buy into this being one of them. Okay, just so when I was editing this video, the page from the novel of how Palpatine transferred his spirit to Exegol was leaked, and yep, it's exactly as I speculated. Here it says the following. So the falling, dying Emperor called in on all the dark power of the Force that thrust his consciousness far, far away to a secret place he had been preparing. His body was dead, an empty vessel long before it found the bottom of the shaft, and his mind jolted to a new awareness in a new body. A painful one, a temporary one. Furthermore, the most important fact behind the clone Palpatine revelation that remains is Anakin's sacrifice wasn't for nothing. He actually did kill Palpatine and fulfilled the prophecy of the Chosen One, bringing balance to the Force at the time. So if anything, Anakin fans definitely shouldn't have a problem finding out Palpatine only came back through cloning. But I'd love to hear what your opinions are on this. Do you agree with the cloning answer being the most reasonable explanation for Palpatine's return? Or do you absolutely hate it and prefer Palpatine still somehow regaining his original body after the Death Star's explosion? Let me know and let's get a conversation going. And as always, be sure to like and share this video, as well to keep it here to Silo for everything on the latest in Star Wars. N7 from Silo, signing out.